You used to check your phone and there it was, a message from them, sometimes before you even woke up. Maybe it was something simple, a good morning, a random thought they had, a joke that wasn't even that funny, but it made you smile because it came from them. And you didn't think about it, you didn't analyze it, you didn't need to, because it was just how things were. That was the rhythm. That was normal. But then slowly, or maybe not so slowly, something shifted. The messages got shorter. The replies took longer. The energy behind the words started to feel different. And one day you caught yourself scrolling back through old conversations just to make sure you weren't imagining it. You weren't. Something changed. And what most people do in that moment is ask the worst possible question. They ask, what did I do wrong? But here's what almost nobody realizes. This is rarely about something you did. What's actually happening is far more complex, far more internal, and far more revealing than most people are prepared to understand. Before we go any further, if this is the kind of content that makes you pause and think, if you've ever felt that subtle shift in someone's texting and didn't know what to make of it, I need you to do something small but meaningful right now. Hit that subscribe button, leave a like, and stay with me through this entire video. Because what I'm about to break down is going to change the way you read every conversation you've ever had. This isn't surface-level advice. This goes deep. And I promise you, by the end, you'll see something you've never seen before. Now let me take you inside what's actually happening when someone stops texting like they used to. Because the truth is, the way a person communicates digitally is one of the most honest reflections of their internal state. Psychologists who study digital communication patterns have found that texting behavior is deeply tied to emotional availability. It's not just about being busy. It's not just about forgetting. When someone consistently changes the way they message you, something has shifted inside of them, emotionally, psychologically, or both. Think about it this way. When you care about someone, when you're emotionally invested, you don't need to be reminded to text them. You don't need to set an alarm to reply. It happens naturally, almost automatically, because that person occupies space in your mind. They're part of your emotional landscape. And when they start to leave that landscape, even slightly, the texting changes before anything else does. It's the first signal. The early warning system most people completely ignore. And here's what makes this so tricky. The person pulling away might not even realize they're doing it. This is one of the most misunderstood aspects of this entire topic. We tend to assume that if someone is texting less, they made a conscious decision. They sat down, thought about it, and chose to pull back. But most of the time, that's not how it works. The shift is unconscious. It comes from a place they haven't fully processed yet. Their feelings are changing, their emotional bandwidth is narrowing, and the texting simply reflects that inner movement before they even have the words to explain it. There's a concept in psychology called emotional withdrawal, and it doesn't always look dramatic. It doesn't always come with an argument or a clear reason. Sometimes it shows up as a slow fade. The responses get a little shorter. The enthusiasm drops. The initiation stops. And if you're on the receiving end, you feel it in your chest before you can even articulate what's wrong. That gut feeling you get when a conversation starts to feel hollow. That's your nervous system picking up on a pattern change. Your brain is wired to detect shifts in social connection. It's a survival mechanism. So when you feel like something's off, you're almost always right. The question is, what does it actually mean? Let me walk you through the most common patterns because each one tells a different story. The first pattern is delayed responses. Someone who used to reply within minutes now takes hours, sometimes a full day. And the reply, when it comes, is brief, almost mechanical. Now, there are absolutely times when life gets in the way. People get overwhelmed with work, with stress, with things that have nothing to do with you. But here's the distinction most people miss. When someone is busy but emotionally connected, they tell you. They say, hey, crazy day, I'll call you later. They maintain the bridge even when they can't cross it. When the delay comes with silence, with no context, no warmth, no acknowledgement, that's not busyness. That's distance. The second pattern is short replies. One-word answers. A thumbs-up emoji where there used to be a paragraph. And I want you to really hear this, because people dismiss this one too easily. The length of someone's message is often a direct reflection of how much emotional energy they're willing to invest in the interaction. When someone goes from writing you long, thoughtful messages to responding with okay or haha, they haven't suddenly become a minimalist communicator. Their emotional investment has decreased. The effort they're willing to put into maintaining connection with you has dropped. And that is significant. The third pattern is the one that hurts the most, and it's the disappearing act. They don't respond for days. They come back with no explanation, maybe a casual hey like nothing happened, and then they disappear again. This pattern often points to something called approach avoidance conflict. They still feel a connection to you, but something about the relationship or about their own internal world is creating resistance. So they oscillate. They come close, then they pull away. And every time they come back, it feels like hope. But every time they vanish, it deepens the wound. This cycle is one of the most emotionally draining dynamics in modern relationships, and most people get trapped in it without understanding what's really driving it. Now here's where things get deeper, and I want you to pay close attention to this next part because it's going to shift your entire perspective. There's a psychological phenomenon called cognitive reappraisal. It's what happens when someone internally reframes their relationship with you. They might not even realize they're doing it, but their brain starts rewriting the story. The things that once excited them about you start to feel ordinary. The conversations that once felt electric now feel like effort. And when this reappraisal happens, the texting changes because the emotional meaning behind the interaction has changed. You're still the same person. You're still saying the same things. But in their internal world, the significance of your words has shifted. And that shift is what creates the distance you're feeling. This is why confronting someone about their texting habits often doesn't work the way you hope. You say you've been distant, and they say, no, I haven't, everything's fine. And they might genuinely believe that, because the change isn't happening in their behavior, it's happening in their perception. They don't feel different because the shift was gradual and internal. But you feel it because you're on the receiving end of a slow emotional withdrawal that they haven't even named yet. And I want to be honest with you for a moment. Even though this narration uses an AI voice, I'm a real person behind this. My name is Fernando, and I genuinely appreciate you being here, watching and taking time to understand something that affects almost every single one of us. I truly hope you are blessed beyond measure, always. Now, let me continue because there's more you need to hear. There's another layer to this that most psychology content never touches, and it has to do with identity. When someone starts pulling away through their texting behavior, sometimes it's not about you at all. Sometimes they're going through a period of internal restructuring. Their sense of self is shifting. Their priorities are realigning. And in that process, every relationship in their life gets reassessed. Not because those relationships are bad, but because the person they're becoming needs different things than the person they were. This is especially common during major life transitions. A new job, a move, a loss, a period of personal growth. When someone's identity is in flux, their relational patterns change. And texting, because it's so immediate and constant, is the first place those changes show up. They start texting less, not because they care less, but because they're in the middle of something they can't fully articulate. And the sad part is, most people on the receiving end interpret this as rejection when it's actually transformation. But I don't want to romanticize this either, because sometimes the change in texting is exactly what it looks like. Sometimes it means someone has lost interest. And recognizing that requires honesty, both with yourself and with what you're observing. There are certain signs that indicate genuine emotional disengagement rather than a temporary phase. If someone consistently avoids deeper conversation, if they only respond when you initiate, if their messages feel transactional rather than relational, if they never ask about your life, your day, your feelings, those aren't signs of someone going through a phase. Those are signs of someone who has emotionally exited the relationship, but hasn't said it out loud. And this is where we have to talk about something uncomfortable. A lot of people use texting distance as a way to end relationships without having to actually end them. It's called passive withdrawal, and it's one of the most common but least discussed relationship behaviors. Instead of having a direct conversation, they slowly reduce their presence until the other person gets the message. It's avoidance. It's conflict averse. And it leaves the person on the receiving end stuck in a loop of uncertainty that can last for weeks or even months. If you've ever been in that loop, I want you to know something important. The confusion you felt was not a weakness. It was a natural response to an unnatural situation. Humans are wired for clarity and connection. When someone gives you mixed signals, your brain literally cannot settle. It keeps scanning, searching, trying to make sense of something that was never designed to make sense, because the other person isn't being honest. not necessarily with you, but with themselves. Now, there's a critical distinction I want to draw here, and this might be the most important part of this entire video. There's a massive difference between someone who pulls away because they're struggling, and someone who pulls away because they've disengaged. And confusing the two can lead to either abandoning someone who needs you or holding on to someone who's already gone. When someone is struggling, their withdrawal usually comes with other signs. They might pull away from everyone, not just you. Their social media activity might drop. They might seem tired, flat, disconnected from things they used to enjoy. This kind of withdrawal is often linked to mental health challenges, burnout, depression, or emotional exhaustion. And the appropriate response here isn't to demand more texting, it's to show up differently. A simple "I'm here, no pressure" can mean more than 100 messages demanding explanations. But when someone has emotionally disengaged, the signs look different. They might still be active on social media. They might still be texting other people. Their energy hasn't disappeared, it's just been redirected. They're not withdrawing from the world, they're withdrawing from you. And recognizing that distinction, as painful as it is one of the most important emotional skills you can develop. Let me share something that most people never consider. The anxiety you feel when someone's texting changes is not just about that person. It activates something much deeper. Attachment theory tells us that our early experiences with caregivers create templates for how we handle closeness and distance in adult relationships. If you had a caregiver who was inconsistent, sometimes warm and sometimes cold, sometimes present and sometimes absent, then any form of unpredictable communication in your adult life can trigger that old wound. The panic you feel when someone takes hours to reply might not be entirely about them. Part of it might be a younger version of you responding to a very old fear. The fear of being forgotten, of not being enough, of being left behind. And this is why understanding the psychology behind texting changes is so important. It's not just about reading someone else's behavior. It's about understanding your own reaction to it. Because when you know what's being triggered inside you, you can respond with clarity instead of reactivity. You can ask calm questions instead of making desperate accusations. You can hold space for uncertainty without letting it consume you. There's something else I want you to consider, and this is where the topic gets truly profound. Every relationship has a communication rhythm. It's like a heartbeat. When two people are in sync, the texting flows naturally, easily, without thought. But when that rhythm starts to falter, it creates a kind of relational arrhythmia. You can feel it. The timing is off. The warmth is gone. The words are there, but the feeling behind them has faded. And just like a physical arrhythmia can signal a deeper health issue, a relational one often signals a deeper emotional shift that needs attention. The mistake most people make is trying to fix the symptom instead of addressing the cause. They try to text more to be funnier, to be more interesting, to pull the other person back with effort. But you cannot out-text emotional distance. If someone's heart is shifting, no amount of clever messages will reverse it. What might work, though, is honest, vulnerable, direct conversation. Not through text, not through hints, but face-to-face, voice-to-voice, where tone and body language carry the truth that words on a screen never can. And here's the part nobody tells you. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do when someone changes their texting pattern is to let them go. Not with anger, not with resentment, but with the quiet understanding that people are allowed to change. Feelings are allowed to shift. And someone's inability to maintain the same level of connection doesn't always mean they're a bad person. It sometimes just means they're a human being navigating their own inner world the only way they know how. But, and this is a serious, but if you notice a sudden and dramatic change in someone's communication, especially if it comes with emotional flatness, withdrawal from activities they used to love, or expressions of hopelessness, please don't dismiss that as just texting behavior. Those can be signs of something much more serious. Mental health struggles often show up first in the small, quiet changes, the ones we're tempted to overlook. If someone you care about suddenly goes silent, checking in on them isn't just kind, it might be necessary. So let me leave you with this. The next time someone stops texting you the way they used to, before you spiral, before you assume the worst, before you write the story of what it means in your head, pause. Take a breath. Remember that behind every screen is a full, complex, sometimes overwhelmed human being. Their silence might be about you, but it might also be about them. And the only way to know the difference is to stop reading between the lines and start asking real questions. With compassion, with patience, and with the courage to hear answers you might not want to hear. Because at the end of the day, the way someone texts you is not the full measure of how they feel about you. But the way you respond to changes in that texting, that says everything about how well you understand yourself. And understanding yourself truly, deeply, honestly, is the first step to understanding anyone else. That's where real connection begins. Not in the messages themselves, but in what you do when the messages change.